Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. There's a couple of really good SMGs in Warzone right now. I mean, the category in general is pretty competitive. You could use quite a few different options and do really well with them. You got some ones that are really good up close. You have ones that are, better as sniper support, and they're actually relatively usable in some more medium range fights. There is one SMG though in particular that I feel like is honestly pretty slept on. It's really underrated, and that is none other than the PPSH. When this thing first dropped, for like the first 24 hours that it was out, everyone was like, yeah, this SMG is insane. It feels really good. And then we got into the stat digging, right? We started looking at, hey, this is actually the TTK on it. This is actually how it compares over range, and it really wasn't actually all that good. And then it got some buffs, and it became a lot more viable and a lot more competitive. And in the current meta right now, the PPSH on paper is actually really good and really strong against all the other meta SMGs. So today we're looking at the PPSH in specific, breaking down all of its key stats, how it stacks up against other SMGs, and of course the best setup for it as well. If you enjoy the video at any point, let me know by dropping a like on it. Would be seriously appreciated. And of course, if you're new to the channel or if you haven't already subscribed, I am always covering absolutely everything going on in COD. So if you want to stay up to date with all of that, feel free to subscribe with your notifications turned on. Also, 2 words: gamer advantage. You guys see me wearing the blue light glasses in pretty much every single face cam video. They are by far my favorite part of my day-to-day setup here when it comes to editing, playing games, basically just looking at screens. They're a lifesaver, bro. No more headaches, less eye strain, you sleep better at night. Like, I cannot recommend these enough. If you guys want to pick up a pair for yourself, they offer prescription lenses, they offer just basic lenses. They got something for everybody. Link is in the description below, and code Immortal actually gets you 10% off your order as well. Now, first things first, we got to check out True Game Data, look at all the detailed stats on the PPSH. Of course, True Game Data, Anthony, he's a wizard when it comes to the numbers. This site is so useful for trying to figure out, hey, is this gun actually worth using? And in the case of the PPSH, it is 100% worth using. So we have our TTK times here. We're looking at the chest shots here. We'll of course look at every single part of the body. PPSH is going to be the orange line here, and you can see literally all throughout it is extremely competitive. Up close, you're looking at about a 560 millisecond TTK. That extends up until about 16 meters, where it's still a 0.59. Which is actually relatively competitive when you look at the other SMGs. Of course, the only things beating this out here are the light pink, which is going to be the bullfrog to the chest, which is actually really good. And then, of course, though, it drops off into oblivion up here. You also have the Modern Warfare MP5, which has some pretty severe drop-offs, and the Cold War MP5, which has even more severe drop-offs. Whereas the PPSH has that super competitive up-close TTK to about 16.6 meters. Then it only drops off once, and then from 16 meters to infinity, it doesn't have any other major drop-offs. It's just a slow decrease of TTK over time, which is natural for every other single weapon. In fact, the only weapon that is even close to it past those 16 meters is the Milano, surprisingly enough, which pretty much shares an even TTK with it past that 20 meter range. You guys can see the lines there are neck and neck. And of course, this is only to the chest, but it stands true. The PPSH over range is actually surprisingly good. It is a little bit harder to control than the Milano, but it also has some other pros over it as well. Bigger magazine, better fire rate, so on and so forth. It's a lot more forgiving. So the chest TTK on the PPSH is actually surprisingly good, right? Let's go ahead. Let's look at the headshot TTK. Again, it's going to be in the top. The Bullfrog wins by a mile, but again, it suffers from some pretty insane damage drop-offs, and past that 19 meter mark, it's pretty much useless to use. The Mac 10 is way slower than it. The regular Milano is way slower than it. You got the MP5s again, though, which are both still really good. Cold War and Modern Warfare MP5. But they drop off again. And you can see past 16 meters, neither of the MP5s can beat out the PPSH over range. So, those 15, 20, 25 meter fights, the PPSH is going to be the top dog again when you're hitting headshots. We look at the stomach shots now. PPSH is again extremely competitive. It's the best over range past that 16 meter mark. And up close, the only things that are competing with it is the Bullfrog and both MP5s, which again suffer from some very serious damage drop-offs. You look up at the actual range here, the Bullfrog is garbage past 19 meters. The Modern Warfare MP5 is not great past 17 meters. The Cold War MP5 is not great past 15 meters. The PPSH, though, is still in that 700 millisecond mark over range. And then finally, you go ahead, you look at the extremities, and again, the only things beating out the PPSH are the Cold War and the Modern Warfare MP5. And the second they drop off, nothing else is really competing with it. The Milano has a slight edge over it for a bit there, but it's only, in between 16 and 20 meters that the PPSH is not the best to the extremities. So consistently overall, the PPSH has a TTK that is pretty much beating out everything over range for sure. Then up close, it is just about as competitive as it gets. But TTKs aren't the only important stat to look at. We also have all of our mobility and other basic stat lines. Its rate of fire is second best only to the Mac 10, which really wasn't even in the conversation when it comes to TTK over range. Its ADS time is very impressive, a lot faster than the MP5 from Modern Warfare, a little bit faster than the Cold War MP5. Sprint to fire time is going to be equal. Tac sprint to fire time is going to be equal or faster than some of the other options. The movement speed is actually pretty impressive. It's over 5, whereas the only other ones there are the Milano and the Mac 10. The ADS movement speed is really, really fast. It's the third fastest here. You also have really good bullet velocity, 650, the best velocity, or tied for the best velocity with the Bullfrog. So when it comes down to it, on paper, the PPSH is actually really, really good, and that does transfer over in game. This thing is going to fry. Now, when it comes to the actual setup here, there's a few different ways you can build this. You can either go all for speed and all for aggression, and you're pretty much going to build it like you would any other Cold War SMG. That would consist of the sound suppressor first and foremost. You get the better ADS time, you get some slightly better velocity, and you stay off the minimap. You go for the Task Force barrel as well. It's the best option for all the Cold War subs. You'd go ahead, you'd throw on the Tiger Team Spotlight on there. Specifically on the PPSH, the 71 round drum is insane. You guys saw the TTKs, the damage per mag here and the potential kills per mag is fantastic. And this drum doesn't really slow you down all that much. You're not going to be slower when you're running around. You have a slightly worse reload and ADS time, but 71 rounds, competitively speaking and comparatively speaking to the other SMGs, is just golden. And then finally, for a basic Cold War SMG setup, you go for the Raider stock as well. So you're looking at a lot of mobility boosts here, and it's going to be great for close range fights. But as we saw, you can also use this at some decently ranged fights. I wouldn't use it, 40, 50, 60 meters. That's just not where an SMG is going to be ideal. But 20, 25, 30 meters, 35 meters, that's actually going to be optimal for the PPSH compared to other SMGs, with really the only exception being the Milano. And if that's the case, you could build it out for just a more well-rounded setup. I'd probably swap out the sound suppressor for the GRU suppressor because it has the mobility. We saw that it is very competitive with all the other SMGs in terms of mobility, so it's feeling good there. Having a slightly slower ADS speed is not going to be the death of you there. Also, you don't necessarily have to have the Tiger Team. Yeah, that's going to make you fly just a little bit faster, but it's not absolutely 110% necessary. You might go for something like the Spetsnaz grip instead, because even without the grip, my one gripe with the PPSH is it does have some like awkward visual bounce. Even like on 120 FOV affected, like what I play on, it can be a bit obnoxious to stay on target just because the recoil, the pattern's not hard, but that visual balance, it's like, it's just kind of going everywhere when you're ADSing. So the Spetsnaz can help out with that a lot. And obviously, if you're using it over range, it'll be a tad bit harder to stay on target with the controls. So this is going to flatten it out some. You get the recoil control from the GRU suppressor as well. So it really makes the weapon a lot more well-rounded. And honestly, this is probably my go-to PPSH setup here, just because it is going to be the most versatile. The other one that we just looked at with the Tiger Team and no grip, that's going to be fantastic for just going all out, rushing as much as you can, which is a playstyle that I favor a lot more. But I think for most players, this is going to be the go-to setup. And like I said, I think this is one of the most slept on weapons and loadouts in the game. Pair this with something like a Farah, like a C58, like a Krig, any of these longer range rifles, and you have your close and medium range covered with great mobility, a great TTK versus what other people will be using in terms of SMG options. So I'm just saying, try the PPSH. I think this thing deserves to be one of the top SMGs, and as of right now, I just don't see it getting that credit, So I'm really enjoying this thing, and I think you guys will as well if you give it a try. With that said, that is going to wrap things up for today. If you enjoyed the video or if you found it helpful, let me know by dropping a like on it. It would be seriously appreciated. And of course, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, feel free to do so. That way you can always stay up to date with everything going on in COD, news, updates, loadouts, all sorts of stuff like that. Once again, and as always, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.